All right, so welcome everybody to another Tuesday session with Product People. We're joined here today by Sumit Mehta Hug from Gropyus, and we'll be discussing innovating in a pre-digitalized industry and the problems and challenges associated with that. So very excited to be discussing this important topic for us today. A little bit about myself before we jump in. My name is Stacy. I've been a product manager with Product People since March. My background is actually in hospitality and operations before I stumbled into tech about 4 years ago. And then really very formally went into product the last few years and joined Product People to really specialize in this industry. I've had the great opportunity to work with several of our clients, including WHO, MS Sleep, which is a great company here in Germany, as well as a few other missions along the way. A little bit about Product People itself. What we do, we're actually a team of 40 product managers, and we are dedicated to help different clients and companies to drive a product in their teams. We empower also a community of 15,000 community members, including yourselves, and share knowledge generously on several topics, such as the one that Sumit's going to present to us today. With our work as interim product managers, we often jump in to support companies to drive initiatives for anywhere between 3 months up to a year plus. So before we jump into Sumit's presentation for today, we wanted to do a quick poll just to assess where everyone stands on the topic at hand. If you're on Zoom, you'll see a poll pop up. If you're on any of our other channels, LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, you can also just populate your answers into the chat as well. So the question for number one is, how emotionally important is your home or the place you live to you? Is it A, I'm very attached to my home, B, I don't really think about it too much, or C, not important at all? And the second question is, 2, have you ever worked on a physical project? A for yes, B for no. And if you're typing your answers into the chat, if you could just specify which question you're answering. So for example, 1A, 2B, etc. I will say from where I come from, personally speaking, had you asked me about 5-10 years ago when I was moving around every couple of years working in hospitality, my answer would have been B. But since settling in Germany, right, for 6 years, it's definitely become more of an emotional attachment for me. So very interesting progression. And I've actually never worked on a physical product, but I definitely know some of what Sumit's going to talk about is very relevant to what I have dealt with in some previous missions. So awesome. Thank you, everyone, so much. The poll. All right. So from what I can see in our Zoom poll, as well as some of our other channels, it seems like actually the majority of everyone is very attached to their home, emotionally speaking, which will be a very interesting starting point for you, Sumit. And then to answer question 2, have you ever worked on a physical product? About 60% have not, and 40% have. Yes. So fantastic, everyone. Thank you for your participation. Let's move on to Sumit's presentation. Again, without further ado, Sumit is the product lead at Gropyus, which is a company based here in Germany. And he's going to discuss with us today about product in a pre-digitalization industry. So I will stop sharing my screen, Sumit, if you'd like to take over from here. Great. And if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you are welcome to begin whenever you're ready.
Hi, so yeah, welcome everyone. I'm Sumit, and I want to talk about innovation in a pre-digitalized industry, about the problems and challenges that I face, and maybe they're also somehow interesting for you on your own product journey. So first I'll talk about me, some challenges, opportunities, and then give you a bit of a summary on what I've explained. So about me, so that's me. If some of you watch ZDF, it was me in the video for the video clip about atomic energy. But yes, I'm a mini celebrity sometimes. I was also featured in a weird magazine in a random occasion. So what about me? Like, what are my experiences? And actually, I don't want to start off with work because I'm more than just my job. So I'm from Texas in the US. I actually wanted to go to architecture school, but I was rejected. But I did end up going to Rutgers in New Jersey, studying history, poli-sci, and economics. I also spent some time in New York. I worked at Columbia. And then after that, I moved to Taiwan, to Taipei, really great place. I also studied there at Shida. And then I came to Germany to do my master's at HWE, which is actually quite close to my office right now, which was a joint master's program where I spent also a year in Chengdu in China. And I graduated also from Southwestern University of Finance and Economics there. So not really your traditional product roadmap, but I guess there is no such thing anyways. As a kid, I really liked city building games. I was really into The Sims. And then next embarrassing fact about me, I actually created a website in high school where I worked with Rhino and I designed like furniture and stuff for The Sims, the original The Sims. So that was just like a weird random thing that I was doing there. Actually, it was so good. A guy from Holland came and he asked me to put some of my models on a magazine, and I was featured in a magazine in Holland. I like to travel a lot. I've also climbed one of the highest mountains. I like also photography, so that's my camera there. And this year I went on a sabbatical where I walked the Camino from from Sevilla to Santiago, or actually even after Santiago, all the way to Finisterre, and that's my cat, or one of my cats. And when it comes to work, here's my work history. So I worked at a lot of companies, but as you can see from this list, I've pretty much done a lot of different random things. Club bouncer, finance, kitchen staff. I worked at a city planning office, restaurant sales, operations manager, finally became a product manager. A little bit of everything since high school. And where do I work? I work at Gropyus, whose vision is to provide sustainable living for everyone. So you can also see from the picture below, it also means people that may have disabilities or people that may become it. And these are 3 pillars: affordable, sustainable, aspirational. Of course, you can learn more by going to our website down there. Yet the whole idea is that, or what's behind us is really full automation. So you have an idea of the building you want to make, and you take it down to a fully standing building people love, and maybe even after that, how you dismantle the building and put it all together, or put it for recycling to put into a new building. And it's very, very ambitious. It's almost like many, many companies all together, which makes it all a little bit more interesting there. And my focus will be really on architecture and design. So that's the area I work in right now at the company. So what kind of challenges did I face? I mean, the first thing, which is quite obvious, it's not a website. It's much more complex than an application or website. It's really something that someone will live in. On the right, you can see actually one of our buildings that's standing near Koblenz. So that means that the degree of dependency, or like how important your product is to people, is much, much higher than any other product. This is really something people will live in. People will live in it, they can depend on it, and you can't really fix it easily. That means the decisions you make are very critical. The products you build are very important. And yeah, I think everyone here has a roof over their heads, so it's also a very strong emotional attachment to it. And there is technology in construction. I don't want to say there isn't any. Yet when we talk about technology, it's really built on top of current processes. You don't want to take the full risk. You're going into products that you know can fit into someone else's existing use case. So it means that you know that there's paper, you know that it's based on experiences. Someone comes to you and they say, I did this and this and this, and then, okay, I built this. Experts have a huge monopoly in the industry. It's mostly about conceptualization, as there's a bit of an art to it. There's this concept of BIM, which is a kind of data behind it that is also used across the industry. And there isn't really the concept of productization. It's really about individual little softwares to make everything work together really well. And normally when you talk to industry, especially when you're talking to consultants or people outside, it's often an emotional response you get when you talk about digitalization, and not like what I showed you in the previous slide, but actually true digitalization. You get comments like that is impossible. This is not how our industry works. You just don't understand. You will always need us, the monopoly of experts. This is how we work. And this is a building, people live in it. It's not a website. That's a nice popular one as well. Yeah, but I mean, humans have been designing buildings for a long time, and they don't always come to full success. And you can see the picture on the bottom right is actually my home city, Houston, as it is not a very beautiful place when you look at all the concrete, but that is the reality of it. And having just humans behind it does not guarantee that you create this artistic or beauty behind it. And this is a kind of counter argument, right? When it's not just about people, but technology can also have a good hand in how we create things. Another expectation or another thing that I've also expected is that stakeholders have had lots of experience working with IT agencies. That means that you have someone in-house who's the IT guy. IT guy can code. Code can mean anything. And it's this kind of discussion. So I would go to you, say, what do you want? Build me this and that. Okay, here you go. Well, I need this and that too, plus also that. But the way we work when we talk about creating product in this kind of industry, it's more about we. What do we need? How did you work? Where do you feel we should go? Look at me spending so much time doing this and that. So we're watching the person or the stakeholder. And then I compare this with the work of our business. And it really means a lot of research, continual testing to see what we need to do, especially when you have less on the market to compare with. And one of the biggest difficulties, I would say, is imposter syndrome. And I know this exists across all products, across all kind of industries, companies you work for. But have you ever imagined going to an architect and tell them, my computer could design something as well, or even better? Can I go to an electrical system design and go and tell an electrical engineer that maybe there's a better way to do it? And do I really know that I have a better process versus someone who's worked in the industry for 40 years? And it's very hard when you go through these different questions because you don't know those things. You've never done those things before. And then you ask yourself, must I just take their word for it? Because that is how it works. You feel like the imposter. So it isn't really the end of the world because there are lots of opportunities to it because you are not an idiot. You have skill set to challenge people. And even in your digital products, and you have to really think about it, you are also an expert. I know sometimes we product managers get really into like, oh, I know everything. But there was one time you really didn't know what you were doing and you figured out how to do it. As a product manager, you're also very open to learn, and you're also providing a very fresh perspective. You may not be an architect, you may not be an engineer, but you're bringing up those questions that were not asked there before. In my situation, it was really starting from ground zero. As my laptop says, number 2. I was one of the first people to start here, and it really means going out from ground zero, starting from nothing. Here are some of the things I did. So I did stakeholder interviews. I talked to experts and architects, like architects, for example. It was about identifying a user for any sort of product, drawing ideas on paper, assumption mapping, creating product brief, Excel prototype. And Excel prototype is actually very funny. As one user actually thought it was a real software, and he got super excited about it. And they're like, can I put this in there? I was like, it's just an Excel sheet. It doesn't do all those things. And yeah, it is very, very intimidating. And there's a lot of bias. It'll take many iterations, and you will often find yourself putting technology on top of the current flow, or rather than challenging the flow. And I had really a lot of imposter syndrome. And maybe for a little while when I started, it really owned me. It was very difficult. Because it's very easy when someone is an expert, they give you a process and you say, okay, let me put technology on top of that. And that's something I'm also guilty of. But if I look in retrospect, it's always important to be more confident that you are capable of not having to do those kind of things. And I wrote a little, we craft value even if it means lighting a match to what is the norm. So don't be scared to burn things down. Another thing is to take learnings from other players. So I also looked at other companies, getting demos, seeing if there's room for synergies, or trying to learn from their decisions. And as you can see from here, when you're really in an innovation niche, like really something different that doesn't exist on the market, you have other companies around you. Maybe they're not doing exactly what you're doing. So maybe it's thinking back about this Revit company or whatever. You can take learnings from them. You can learn from them. But also, you don't have to build everything in-house. It's like a really standard rookie mistake. I need to build everything. But maybe some of these companies, like Company G, maybe they're very interesting and they could work with us to build something better. And you're using someone else's resources. And when you look at business opportunity, it could even be worth doing something like this. I also put this funny company R here as inspiration. Sometimes you have a really random company who's not doing exactly what you're doing. For example, they're not doing architecture and design. Maybe they're doing water filters or something like this. But what they've built, the products they've built are almost identical to yours. So they can play like an inspiration. So they're not really in your market, but what they've built could be kind of interesting when you put your own things into it. Another thing is about universities. Maybe it's not something that we've all experienced, but a lot of technical jobs, there's a lot of inspiration or exciting things that happen on the university level. Then you end up going into the field and you find out that everybody tells you no. And that is something that has occurred in the architecture field. There's a lot of ideas you get from universities, and it meant talking to scientists. So I have spoken to people that are researchers or like very much into topics at the university level that are doing research. And topics like this mean that we could potentially run collaborations with them because we are looking at something new. It's an idea they did in university, they graduate, they go into an architecture firm, and then all those dreams kind of slowly swivel away because they're busy drawing lines on Revit rather than doing those kind of crazy ideas they may have had in university. I did at university in China, I did a thesis on urbanization in Chengdu, which sounds really cool, but I never really got to implement anything about that in real life as city policy is very touchy subject on its own. Another key weapon that I use quite well is using the leadership family. So it's not about product. And I don't know if everyone is aware about the topic about the product stool, which is about design, product, and tech sitting together at an equal level. Because if you have those two people at your back, you can go into those stakeholder meetings. You can go in and push those your own objectives with people behind you as well. I mean, it really doesn't work when one is stronger than the other, or one is not really equilibrium. But when you have that equilibrium, you have this ability to kind of really push things forward quite strongly, and you can teach stakeholders together. I very much like to have my tech lead on any conversations I may have, so that we can like explain from two sides the complexities of building products. It's always really nice to have that there. Another thing, I mean, it's something I tried out on my own. I kind of invented it. It's called the mock run. The way it works is that you have lots of assumptions on how it's going to work, and you draw a story based on it. Specialists have really strong opinions, so that people, your stakeholders, or people who are very much involved or have a big stake in your product that you're going to build, maybe even the users, they may have really strong opinions. I mean, if you have 40 years experience, if you have got training as an architect, you likely have a good idea on what you're doing. So the way it works is that you build out this story and you take them down this story. So take an actual project or take something or take a concept that you push through it. And it has to be really real, like make something that they can imagine, that they can feel. And when they cannot imagine, then you put yourself there as well and have them comment on what you do wrong, which is actually something we did in this situation. When it wasn't working so well, we flipped the script and then we took their roles, and then they're like, no, you can't do that. That's not how it works. And that was a really good way to kind of mock how everything would work together using technology and trying to see what that means. And yeah, visuals are always great. I don't know if you can build a dark satanic room if you wanted to do something like this, but visuals go a long way. And then as you go through every stage that you have there, you really focus on the pain points. So get away from I want to this hurts, and you just make assumptions or make notes along every stage. And because, just to stress it a bit more, focusing on the pain to keep away from this is my process, now add technology to it. I really moved away from tying myself to the process and kind of reversed it. Like, do you need to contact this person? What do you hate by your job? How would you solve this another way? Or do you always need to contact this person? And then you kind of get answers from them that you can kind of build into it, which is always really nice. And this is an actual real picture from something we did. It was a joint strategy session we did with all the different people. including the software engineers. Software engineers also are very, very good at understanding problems and trying to figure out what they mean. So you should also include them. In this case, we included the users, the stakeholders, everyone together. And I also had them mixed up so that software engineer with a user, for example, have them sitting together and then kind of organically trying to learn from each other and also trying to come up with ideas together to understand each other. And it's really about creating missionaries and not mercenaries, because it's not their product. And actually, I often had this situation where people said it was Summit's product, and I also had like a presentation I crossed my name off and said it's our product. And actually, after this, we had karaoke and a barbecue. I can highly recommend having karaoke with your users. It's a great way to break the ice. And of course, a business case is always important, as numbers are always a nice way for people to understand different ideas that you may have. So maybe you can't speak the same language, but numbers are a good way to kind of understand it or make it more interesting. And also, I know you've seen something like this iteration process, but in this situation, when you're really innovating, you have users who have not had so much use or idea behind technology. You're not only learning from your user's learning from you, because maybe they don't fully understand what you're doing. But as you continue to like iterate, create new features, okay, all right, this looks interesting. So this solved this one problem I had. And then finally, they will understand what you're doing. And it's a bit iterative because you will make mistakes in the process, because maybe you have not fully understood their needs because of the complications of understanding what their requirements are. But it does come over time, and you also build trust. Karaoke also builds trust. And then, yeah, just to summarize, push back your imposter syndrome. You're great, you're fabulous. Smile every time you see yourself. Learn from theorists, so not just the industry. So when you're talking about innovation, something very different, it's really good to look at universities, people who've written papers. Your software engineers or data scientists may also have lots of interesting characters you can talk to. And they are very interesting, trust me. People who dedicate their life to education. It's very interesting. You may not have competitors, but companies that can help you build. Move forward with design and tech, so product stool. Talk numbers, how your product will change people, business, and or market. So it's not just about the business case, but you can look at data in a different way, like this will make people X amount happy. And test your stakeholders, experiment, mock run, role play, try out all kinds of things, don't give up. I definitely did not. I tried out all kinds of strategies to get on the same page. And then to conclude, innovation is really building something new. So don't lose sight of that. So it's really something new. Don't cheap out and just put something on top of something that exists. And don't forget to have fun. If you're not having fun, then maybe you should rethink if this was the right course in the first place. Cool.
Awesome, Sumit. Thanks so much. If you like, I can take over sharing the screen. Thanks for a very engaging presentation. I actually want pretty much every one of your slides as my computer background for the next week or two. I think they're all great gems of words of wisdom, not just for an industry such as yours, right? But generally speaking, like how to manage, I said, stakeholders and working with users and collaborating. I think there's a lot of great insight for everyone to learn from. So thank you very much for that. Now we are at our Q&A portion of the evening. For everyone here on Zoom, you're welcome to raise your hand and ask a question. You can also pop your questions into the chat. For everyone on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, and so on, you can also just drop it in the chat and my colleagues will make sure those get to me. In the meantime, while you are formulating your very wonderful questions, let me take you on a quick pivot and I'll distract you with some more background on product people, and then we'll swing right back to asking Sumit your hard-hitting questions. So you should be able to see my screen. Let me pop over to, I mentioned earlier, product people, we work as interim product management support. Just a few use cases when our services might be most appropriate. Like I said, as an interim product manager, for example, if one of your product managers is away on parental leave, or you're looking to hire, as we know, that can take months to find the right fit, our team is essentially well prepared to jump right in on board and cover while you find the ultimate fit or for your product manager to return. We also have a lot of senior product managers who can coach your team to either facilitate more product thinking in the company or to help streamline and analyze your current ways of working. Or ultimately to drive a new initiative, right? You don't yet have a formal team, but want to just test something out. We can also support with a low code or no code pilots. So at the bottom here, you see a few of the clients that we've worked with previously, as well as some positive feedback that we've received from different clients, usually highlighting how fast we onboard and how fantastic some of my colleagues are. Here are just some more clients that we've worked with in the B2B segment, including World Health Organization, Utopia, lots of different companies across many different industries. Also our B2C clients, as you can also tell, across different industries, also different sizes in companies and different missions that they've asked us to run. So a little bit about the company itself. We have about a 71% client retention. We work a lot with, for example, a lot of our clients have lots of missions that they end up bringing us on board for. We also have, like I said, 40 dedicated product managers, which is quite unique to have this kind of brain hive around us. And then also a fun fact is that we have about 56% women in our team with 66 in leadership. As you can tell from our beautiful mosaic here of all of our faces here at Product People. And for those of you who are looking, we saved a little spot for you because we are hiring. So for those of you interested, please check us out on boards.eu.greenhouse.io/productpeople. Good. I think I accomplished the goal to distract you all with your questions. Let me just pull up some questions that the team has sent us from our different channels. All right, so one of the first ones, so Sumit, you mentioned about teaching stakeholders. Would love to understand what that means in terms of how do you translate very technical matters, right, to people who are either biased against tech or are unfamiliar with how it works. Any tips on how that might be done?
Yeah, it's quite a good question. So I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all solution. One thing I tried was to create a wiki so that we're kind of maybe speaking the same language or we agree on the same terms. Another way is visuals. Visuals are very well. I mean, maybe if someone is there that knows German regulations. For example, we had a topic about how large a property can be, and really like making sure there's a visual that everyone can see, then they know what that number means. Visuals go a long way, but it really depends on what kind of person you have. Like people have different technological affinities or understanding of that. What I can say is keep away from the words code and databases. So that is, I think that's very key, because these words are used very frequently outside of the tech sector, and then it's just, those are tech words, and they can mean everything, and they can mean nothing, and they can mean anything. So I think those are words to really keep away from and not to bring it up in front of stakeholders as well, because it will only further confuse.
Yeah, or distance. Yeah, I know there's some definitely keywords people are like, oh, that's very technical, or that's when I draw the line of not understanding. Okay, no, very interesting. I also love in your presentation how you covered, really focusing on the pain points, right, and building a narrative, because I think that's something that everyone can resonate with, right, without understanding really technically how is it done, but I can understand its use case, right, and its impact for me. So, okay. Awesome. Another question. Can you describe Gropyus's culture in a few sentences?
Okay, tough. I think the culture is quite unique because you have people from different backgrounds together. So you have to also keep in mind that people might be older than you may be used to. Like definitely compared to Delivery Hero, there's much more diversity in terms of age, which means that when it comes to culture, there can be some issues when you have to communicate, but it also means you have that opportunity to talk to people who are very different from you. So I'd say culturally, it's very, very interesting. Because when we have activities or we have an events or any kind of games going on, you get to have it with people who are very different from you or come from extremely different backgrounds. And yeah, also educationally, skill set, engineer, like someone who studied engineering for sure had a much longer educational period than you have, and they look at things very differently from you. So you have to imagine you have a pub quiz and you have an engineer on your team. You have to imagine that if I was working at Delivery Hero, for example, it's a very, very different person I would have on my team. And actually, I just made a mistake. I said use the word engineer. Actually, when I say engineer, I'm talking about like a building engineer, not a software engineer. Also a complication because a lot of these words are very similar. Developer, software developer, but actually property developer as well. Design, architectural design, designer.
Definitely. Okay, thanks so much for that answer. Question, you mentioned previously about, some responses that you often get from stakeholders, right, or users, which is like, you can't replace us with technology. How do you go about tackling something like that? Because there's definitely, I think, a fear or concern about tech replacing, the experts or the humans at work. How would you go about addressing a concern, a general concern like that?
I would not say they're from the stakeholders. They're more from when you talk to people outside of the company. The people we have here are very much into the topic or are very into digitalization. But when we talk to people outside, you sometimes get some hesitance or resistance. And it is how it is sometimes. I mean, otherwise, why does this company exist? I mean, you exist because there's something there to disrupt, right? And when people come back with these, sometimes it might be worth convincing them otherwise, but sometimes, especially because they're not within the company, there may be a potential software partner or this and that. It's also okay to just let them have it.
There. All right, from Balu here on Zoom, could you describe the motto behind sustainability at Gropyus? How important is it for your clients?
I work more in architecture, so I'm not super connected to it. Sustainability, of course, is very important. We build from wood, which is much more sustainable than concrete, especially with water usage. You can also look at some issues globally about water usage on that. But I think in general, with sustainability, I would defer to the website to get more information. But of course, it is very important. There's also targets from EU regulation to also reach sustainability investments. So of course, sustainability is important even across all parts of the industry.
Awesome, thanks for that answer. You also mentioned earlier about a workshop that you hosted. Would love to ask you questions about the karaoke side of things. But given the topic of today's conversation, just wondering, was this a one-time workshop for you? And then how did you pick, which stakeholders, which users to really bring together? How would you go about scoping or organizing something like that?
It is not the first one. So we did one also last year as well, I think. Yes, also last year. Everyone who's invited is all the software engineers, the tech lead, the designer. So from our side, we are set there. And then from the other side, the users are all invited, along with maybe like a stakeholder from their side as well. So of course, you don't want it too big, but it should be based off of what you have already set up. Like for us, we had 2 departments, to say fully, and it was about bringing all of them. So also their employees, but also the stakeholders that are involved in that. The last one we did last year was quite good. It kind of built a foundation, and this year was about taking it to the next step. So where should we go based on what we have right now? And that was kind of the idea behind it. But I'm sure there's other ways you can also bring your stakeholders in or your users in for other activities. It can also just be for a night of drinks, karaoke straight without the strategy before. But you can have different options on that.
Got it. And go-to karaoke song for yourself? Do you want to share?
No, I think I'm good with that.
Okay, great. From YouTube, user Swap Nil, the question, what was the last feature that your team built and who made the decision to build it, if you're comfortable sharing?
The last feature isn't like anything to brag about or anything there. We work with algorithms. So, I mean, okay, they're very interesting from a mathematical point of view. But as I'm a lead, I have also product managers that work for me. And they are the ones who get the victory and the glory for those achievements there.
Awesome. Okay. Fantastic. Is there a question that you or somebody had asked you? This is more of an open one for you. Anything that you'd like to cover on this subject? Because I know you worked in a lot of companies before this, right? That were a lot more digitalization forward. For you, what was the biggest adjustment for you moving into a company like Gropyus in terms of your ways of working and product approach?
I think generally that the end result is a physical product that people depend on. And I know you go to lots of companies and they're like, okay, you really depend on delivering food on time, your customer depends on this, or your customer depends on getting their furniture on time, or this and that, like, or finances are always correct. But I think keeping in mind that home is a very emotionally sensitive topic, that it is so important for people. I think that would be that was a big challenge for me. Also, when we talk about design and space and what is relevant for people, I think that is quite complex. Also, I work with algorithms, which is also quite complex on its own, or a new kind of complexity, which can also lead on its own to its own imposter syndromes. But I think it takes time and you can overcome it.
Interesting. And thanks for the connection to the emotional aspect. I know that was one of our prompts in the beginning, so it's nice to see that tie around as well. And I'm sure that's one way to also communicate, right, with users, is when you can really connect and resonate on that emotional side as well. So, okay, a question from another one of our channels. If you don't mind sharing, how are your product teams at Gropyus structured?
So we are actively structuring right now, so I cannot say more to that.
Okay, awesome. Great. Let me just see if there's any other questions in our different channels. So you mentioned like there's a lot of different blockers or challenges, right? When people have a bias against tech. Do you find that there's at any point a line that you're just like, okay, you know what, this is not our target user, right? At what point is this person not within your scope, or just maybe really not interested or too biased against to be able to adopt and become a user, if you will?
Could you rephrase that? I didn't fully understand.
So you were saying that there's a lot of, sometimes you face a lot of biases, right, with adapting to tech and whatnot. What for you would mean that a user is perhaps out of your scope, as in not one of your users probably not going to learn or not interested or has a narrative that resonates with your product? Do you have a cutoff point for someone like this?
I think everyone has the capability to learn. So I don't know if I'd say it's a cutoff. Maybe it's like worth using as a challenge. Maybe you have some stakeholders who are very, very difficult, who don't fully understand you. And sometimes when people have different personalities, especially when you're talking a different language, and I'm not talking about English, German, I'm talking about tech, engineering, or architecture. When you have those situations where it's very difficult to communicate, I think you have to persevere because it's in your interest, right? I don't know if it's fair to make a cutoff. Of course, when things don't work well, you can of course escalate or this and that, especially we're talking about people inside of the company or not people that are outside. I mean, I guess if someone outside of the company is not really understanding what you're trying to do, then maybe they don't make a good software partner, so you can cut them off quite quickly. There are a lot of companies in the construction industry in general, but I think there shouldn't be a cutoff. I think you should try your best, look for ways around, and if you cannot solve the problem, then escalate when you can.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sumit. All right, I see a hand from one of our Zoom users. Hi, Marv.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Go ahead and ask your question then.
So it's not really a question, it's more I want to ask Sumit if you can elaborate and if it's not here and it's a more one-on-one, it's fine. Like we could do this on LinkedIn as well, but could you elaborate a little more, because it sounds like that you had experienced imposter syndrome, and it sounds like it was just from your presentation, I can sense that it was maybe a part of your a good portion of your time working, and it lasted a while, and you somehow maybe found different strategies and tactics to kind of overcome it. And I don't know if you fully overcame it, but could you just elaborate a little bit about this whole journey and different things you did there?
I would have to think a bit on if I were to draw a line on when it stopped. I think it's important to have everyone in the same room and also explain. If you have to explain it over and over again what you're trying to do, then that's what you have to do. But I think it also is a little bit personal. I think it takes some time maybe to look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you're not an imposter. I know that sounds super cliche and kind of weird, but to be totally honest, I think imposter syndrome is a very, very personal thing. It's like something that you personally are facing from an emotional level, and I think it really takes time for you to tell yourself, maybe write down your accomplishments, write down things you've done really well, write down your successes, write down what you've done quite well or you've succeeded in. You can also present it, but maybe it's a bit too egoistic. But I think it's really about your own mindset, imposter syndrome. And I think it just takes time, and it took me time to kind of break out of it. And I think maybe even the journey that you have this imposter syndrome, you kind of learn things from there, right? Things become much more clear. Like they give you a process. So you see a process, and this is how it always works. Then you get a second process, and then you get a third process. And all of a sudden you're starting to think, wait, I've been trying to solve this really the wrong way, or I've been looking at this the wrong way. And maybe that also can help you get that kind of boost or morale boost that what you're doing is not pointless, but that you're actually also capable of doing things that you thought you were not capable of understanding. Like I can tell you things about different kind of algorithms now, or I can tell you about what it takes when you are applying for approval from a city. Also tried it myself as well to see how it works. And then you kind of grow that confidence behind that. So that's how maybe it's not the best answer I can give, but from my personal experience, that's what it took for me.
Okay, no, I can kind of piece together some of the things you said. And then build a bigger picture from there. If I may ask just one more follow-up, if that's okay. So regarding the so what about imposter syndrome and your experience around that within your peers and immediate peers and your colleagues in the company? Did you or did they serve as some kind of psychological support, or did you manage to find the right allies that you would leverage from and learn from? Or basically, what do the peers and your colleagues and friends in the company serve, or do they not serve anything?
They definitely serve. They play an integral process in it. So as I described, I was describing just one phase of the whole company journey, as the company journey is quite long, and there's product managers managing it from different sections. And of course, we face the same issues, and we spend time to learn from each other. Sometimes we have a little bitching fest to have together to talk about our frustrations. And I think it's really nice when you have people that you work with who are going through the same thing, because you know you're not alone. And I think that maybe also plays a part to push away the imposter syndrome, because maybe you're also imposters, but maybe you're not at the same time. And you know you have people who have your back. You can also learn how they solve problems. They can learn how you solve problems, or how you break through the imposter glass and become someone who actually creates value for the user.
All right, sweet. Thank you so much for that answer. It was quite insightful. So thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Marv. Good question. And if I may, Sumit, and just from your presentation alone, I think so much of what you've been doing, right, Gropyus, but also a lot of what we do as product managers is collaboration, right? In my personal experience, sometimes imposter syndrome is that I do not fit in, rather, but our skill set is really to bring together, like you said, the experts. You work together with your tech leads, your different stakeholders, architects, and bringing together all the experts, right? And driving the conversation to a place that I think everyone sees value together, right? And you have impact. So a lot of times I think it's a big part of what we do and a lot of our lives, personally speaking and professionally, right? But I think clearly from what you've shown us today, it's something that you overcome by really just relying and having a great team around you. So, all right. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sumit. Thank you, everyone, for a great session today and for your great questions. For everyone who wants to watch us again later, you're welcome to also check out our YouTube channel and LinkedIn. We'll definitely have this recording placed there so you can rewatch Sumit's presentation over and over again as you like. And feel free to follow us on Meetup, for more presentations such as this. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and have a great week. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.